Hey, this is Max. Welcome back to another CSR2 video. I'm here with the Corvette ZR1. I'm going to give you the Stage 6 effects of this car as well as a quick discussion on my take as far as live racing this particular car. Alright, first of all, I'm using the account from Nitrous for CSR2. Thanks to Nitrous for allowing me access to this account and a fully maxed Corvette ZR1 in order to do the research and bring you this video. The Corvette ZR1 fully maxed is a 6.98 dyno car. The car itself generally runs best with a 2.0, 0-100, and 4.0, basically a right-left-left tune. The way the car drives is pretty straightforward. You launch perfect, instant second in nitrous, and then run the car through. It'll run under dyno based on those numbers. So instantly going to second and then basically running the car through up to fifth will get you a under dyno run of 6.8 something. It probably can do better than this. Generally, I don't hit world record times with my devices or my skill. So I would say 6.85 or 4 or even 3 might be possible depending on device and how quickly you can get into second and nitrous. Now, that being said, let's take a look at the stage 6 effects of this car. This car basically, for all of its stage 6s, the car has increased in both performance point and evo as you add stage 6s, right? We're going to start off with engine. Now, at stage 5 only, I'm not going to dyno it for you, but I'll tell you right now, its dyno is an 8.402, and it can run under that, so it's going to be more like an 8.2 and change car when you run it all out. Stage 6 engine, being the first one, will drop the time to 8.248 and improve the evo a bit and add 3 performance point to the stage 5 base. Turbo is pretty bad, adds 2 performance point to the stage 5 base, but only drops the time to 8.363, which is barely anything if you're starting off at 8.402. Intake is not much better. Again, the time drop is very minimal, 2 performance points, but only dropping the time to 8.359. Now, it did beat Turbo by 4 thousandths, making it second worst stage 6 among the stage 6s. Now we get to nitrous. Now nitrous is actually more closely matched to engine in that it drops the time to 8.235. It's slightly better than engine as far as the dyno is concerned, so nitrous edges out engine as far as performance goes. When you get to body is when things get real interesting. 3 performance point, but this drops a lot of time. You're dropping from 8.402 down to 7.982 dyno, and you can still beat dyno some, so that's like almost 5/10 difference as soon as you add this particular stage 6, this being the strongest one out of all of them. Tire comes next, and tire actually is pretty strong too. Tire drops the time to a 8.032 dyno, being only about 500ths slower than what body can do. So it's still not as good as body, but it comes in pretty close. Ultimately, we come up to transmission as the final stage 6. Transmission on a lot of tier 5 cars is the number 1 stage 6, or body will be. Those two tend to fight for first spot quite often, but with this car, it's rather unusual in that tire took second spot, and this is coming in as third at 8.155 dyno from the original 8.402. All right, so now that we've added all the stage 6s, let's talk about a lower performance point, higher evo setup with this car. Generally, for lower performance point, high evo setups, you first get rid of the parts that tend to add a lot of performance points without affecting here. So you're dropping performance points and you're barely affecting that. That means that is not really needed to do this. So in fact here we're starting to get increases as we drop engine off Although the performance point here hasn't dropped that many either, but it did drop quite a few without hurting us at all. Moving right to turbo, you're doing the same thing. You're dropping points here and watching points there going up rather than down. Anytime you see that, that's okay, that's good. That doesn't mean the car is really that much faster. It's faster than if you had a higher performance point with lower Evo or equivalent. So if you were to pick between the two, generally speaking, having the lower number here and higher number there is very helpful. And once we get down to all three of these being gone, you're looking at about 2,500 Evo here on tuned. But we'll talk about that. This car is really not that tunable. So, and here with 3 stages of intake added, you can actually bump this to about 2,600. This is a pretty fast setup with 3 stage 6s, the top 3 of course. Let's take a look what it does. The real key here is it doesn't really matter what dyno the car runs to. If the car dynos at 8.5 at this kind of numbers, that's a pretty competitive number set. But the real question is, can it run better than 8.5, or is it going to run slower than 8.5, in which case it won't be that competitive when you actually match it to other cars. Right? So the good news there is I didn't get needle drop, which in some cases you do. Rather than going to 5th, we're only going to 4th because we don't have that many parts in. But let's take a look at what it did. It basically did what the dyno says. That's not really that great. We don't want to end up with just dyno. So one of the things I tend to do is to see if I can squeeze some more out of it through adjusting other tuning parts before we start completely changing parts. But let's take a look here again. Okay. The shift patterns for max cars can generally be used in a similar way for non-max cars, but you have to adjust sometimes the timing of when you shift and also the way you look at the shifts. This time I actually did a little bit more under dyno, but again, not great numbers. Since we're not getting the dyno beating numbers, then having it set up this way isn't that beneficial to me. I would rather drop some parts and see if I can get into a slower lobby, but actually beat dyno more. So let's go ahead and drop tire down to stage 3 and try again. And this is basically a way to put yourself in a different lobby and hopefully have more competitive edge. So now we're looking at 9.269. You could probably tweak this to say 9.3. 9.3, so let's put it at 9.333 and see how close we can get to 9.0, because that'll affect how you lobby and how you can gauge if you can beat someone in the lobby. Now, see all that tire spinning? That's a bad sign. That means when I shifted instantly to second, because I lowered the tire grip already, I'm not getting actual grip as far as the game's concerned. Tire spin's never good for your time, so we need to reevaluate that first. And one thing I may have to do is let the car run through first gear a little bit before I shift to, whoop, got 0 RPM drop. Now, 0 RPM drop, because that means that the car theoretically, without the 0 RPM drop, should run better. Sometimes the 0 RPM drop itself runs better. You'll find out pretty quickly when you start doing test runs. I did basically dyno on that one with the 0 RPM drop. Okay, so we have worse and basically dyno still. We don't have a dyno beating setup at this point. Again, with all that tire spin, I just don't see this being fast. So we may have to go back to the drawing board for this one as far as making this car more competitive. So a 9.3 lobby, I don't foresee it being super competitive, not unless we can change the dynamic of the car so that it can beat dyno by at least a little bit more. And that's really the evaluation I always go through when I look at these cars. If I can't beat dyno with these cars for whatever reason easily, then at some point I have to consider if I want to keep this car as one of my live racers, because the whole point of having them is to have a live racer that beats dyno. My feeling is that with this car, nitrous might be more important for dyno beating, and also these stage 6s, if anything, while they add a lot of performance, may actually be holding you back. Let's see if we can. Let's see what this does. If I can get a 9.9 run out of it, this is a good sign. So let's see if the little tweak I did there will help us. Not too much tire spin. That's a good sign. So without the tire spin, that means the car's sticking, and therefore it should run pretty well. And there it is, 9.9 on a 10.218. Not quite 0.3, but pretty close. You could probably tweak it a little more to get 0.3. But anyway, that seems like a better setup than what I was dealing with before. And the beauty of this one is that it doesn't even use stage 6s. So you're in the 10s, and there's no stage 6s required for this car. So that's a 5.5.3.5 setup. You can always adjust this as well. You could potentially go to something more aggressive, like here with 6, and then maybe this down to 4, which will put you still at this kind of a number. But the question is, can I beat dyno by a little more? That's, you don't just care about the Evo, you also care about what the car can run. And if it can run faster, because of that extra amount of nitrous pushing it, then you probably want that setup instead of a setup where it struggles to beat dyno. That's always the key. We don't want a car that cannot beat dyno, even especially with the current matchmaking. The capability to beat dyno some is a lot more important than it used to be. Okay, so we basically did the same run, except we start off at a slower dyno. So this is basically the same idea. It's beating dyno a little more, and maybe I can even tweak it for even little more, but I don't think there's a whole lot more in this car. So it looks like it likes nitrous in order to beat dyno more, and you can drop other parts depending on what makes the most sense with the performance point to evo ratio. Okay, so that's using a stage 6 nitrous. You can also do it without stage 6 nitrous and put this to 5. You can also potentially do it this way, but then that's a little high, and this is not really high enough. Even if that puts you in the 9.8 bracket, it reduces your ability to be really competitive, when you're matchmaking against other people, because as this goes up, your ability to kind of match to slower cars become less and less. You're going to match only to cars that are actually your dyno. But let's make one run and see how this turns out. Oh, got the 0 RPM again. That's not good. That means I'm going to lose out a little bit here on the performance end. So this is going to run close to dyno at best. Yep, 9.8 on a 9.7 is not that great. Last run, and then we'll call the video. There's no point for me to keep talking because I've already kind of gave you guys the layout on how this would work. Too much wheel spin, it looks like, so not likely to get us what we want out of the performance end. So adding that extra tire stages in to drop it 9.7 doesn't really seem to help the overall competitiveness of this car, because, well, you're not going to be able to actually beat dyno any, and therefore you're going to not have that margin of error to play with. Okay, so that is the Corvette ZR1. My verdict on this car, it's okay. It should be relatively good against other cars like it, but it's not excellent and it doesn't really stand out beyond what your typical decent Evo cars would be able to do. So it's an okay car. I guess I could say it's good. It's not terrible or bad or just okay. It's actually pretty good, but it's not a top tier car when it comes to live racing as far as I'm concerned. So let me know what you think. Feel free to comment and add your own thoughts. If you like the video, leave a like. If you like my channel and like this kind of videos, well, subscribe, hit the bell, and you get notified when I put up new videos. And as always, thank you for watching my videos. I'll catch you next time.